My name is Matt Storr and I repair saxophones for a living, and today I would like to show you original setup on a absolutely mint Zephyr Special Tenor. So King Zephyr Special Tenor. And this is all original, and just wanted to kind of show you what that looks like. First off, the sterling silver neck on these actually originally had lacquer shot over it. It's just often missing. I've only ever seen it more complete than this once. This just has like a couple little speckles here and there. But this is what it looked like originally. After this wears off and the silver gets shinier, it looks a little bit different, but that is absolutely original, solid sterling silver with gold tinted lacquer shot over it. And you can see the octave pad is almost level with the cup there. It's a fairly deep cup compared to a lot of instruments. Little piece of cork here. And on the instrument itself, I'm trying to keep my head steady since I'm using my GoPro for this. And trying to grab, I can't do it, trying to grab my leak light without disturbing things. Let's give you a little bit better of an idea of what the pad heights look like. You can see, and they've got a, sort of flat metal resonator riveted in there. Thin pads. Typically this is about the pad heights I put on these too. Maybe like a 0.5 millimeter more closed, like right there maybe. But barely. They don't need to be more open than this, that's for sure. One of the interesting things about this horn, as far as the original setup, is that they've actually got like just leather in a few places, like that right there. Hopefully you can see that where I'm pointing to. On this runner for the B and B flat. That is just a very thin strip of leather. And there's also a little strip of leather here. What that means is if you are finding a horn that's in original condition and you're putting like a, anything thicker than that on there, your geometry is going to be off, right? So you're going to have to, bend things around to make that work for you. But as you can see, a very, very thin piece of material, even after, this hasn't been oiled since, before World War II. It's still fairly quiet. It could be a little bit quieter, probably would be with like a little bit of key fitting and some oil, but that actually works surprisingly well if you can avoid the bounce that you see happening here. Got thick pieces of cork underneath the E flat, chromatic F sharp, another thick piece here. The side key usually had a little bit of leather on the top and bottom of that little arm. I actually do something similar. I usually wrap it all the way around in leather or in synthetic felt. You can see really, really thin corks on the bottom of the D here. So that's the key height for the D that they would have on there. It's fairly wide open. Usually had these really wide open. I find they don't need to be that open. So usually, that fit is pretty good on the hand, but I'll have like a little bit more material there. Could wear it's a little bit more like parallel to the body. And I find that that's usually plenty. We can also see there's like a little bit of leather right here for the G sharp as it goes inside this guide, which is fairly tight. A little bit of leather here for the B against the G sharp. A little bit of leather on the bottom of this arm right here where the C sharp touches the G sharp. Moving along, looking at the back of the lower stack, we can see that we've got cork on top of the key arm and on the bottom of the key arm, providing height. So you got forced transmission here to the F sharp bar with cork. It's not very thick. And then surprisingly thin cork on the bottom of those key feet. But again, it's not overly loud, even though this thing hasn't been oiled in forever. So you can either, bend the keys up a little bit with your inherent key adjustment so you can put something a little more on there, or see if you can get away with a really thin adjustment material like they did originally. But I typically find that to be a little bit noisy. So usually I will bend those keys upwards just a little bit so that I can have a thicker piece of material on the bottom here. But, if it's too thick, especially if it's cork, then it will compress. Thinner pieces of cork like that won't compress as much, so that's why you see that a lot of times on old horns. If we look at the upper stack, you can see the key heights there. Let me get a little bit less glare. This is about where I put mine as well. Seems to work really, really well. Nice thin pieces of felt on the bottom of the A there to hold the bis down. Another thin piece of felt for the front F. And there's a little piece of cork here to keep the G from going too far. So you can actually see the G closes before that actually touches. That's just to keep you from bending it too far, because this key arm is really long and you could cause it to go out of adjustment over time if you had a gorilla grip. So they put a little stopper there to keep it from over traveling. The G sharp, also another spot where you've got some leather. This is actually just like leather right there on that tab that interacts with the G sharp itself. And there's a little bit of sliding there, but you can see that's smooth as butter, right? So leather actually has like pad leather, and you can just take one of your pads, if you've got high quality pads that have pretty sturdy leather on it, you can just take one of your pads like I do and cut off the face of it and use that for your leather adjustments. I actually used to, when I bought my pads from Farees, every once in a while you could get like a grab bag of giant pads, and yeah, like I've got just so much of this stuff. I mean, it'll last 50 lifetimes. So anyhow, let's move on to the octave mechanism, which is always a little bit interesting on these. You can see we've got cork here where the G sharp rests against the octave pad on the body octave pad. There's a little bit of leather right here where it pushes the body octave lever back down under use. And another little bit of leather right here. They really liked leather for their sliding linkages, and leather right here. It does seem to hold up over time, but I think if you laminate your leather with Teflon, like really, really thin Teflon, you can get an even better result. And there's a little bit of cork right here. You'll notice it doesn't actually touch. So that is let's get you out of here. This is the end plug. When you set this up, you can see that the neck, it's a little gummy because it hasn't been cleaned in forever. But that's the way that sits, right? It actually has a little bit of room right there. A little bit extra room. And for the G sharp bis, these have actual adjustment screws on them, but I've never really found them used from the factory. They're so small. It seems like it's basically good for like micro adjustments. You put the cork or whatever on here, sand it so that it's the correct thickness, and then if it compresses over time, you can give that like an 1/8 turn, and that'll push like the center part of it out. But the actual bearing surface, of that screw is like, tiny, like the head of a pencil, compared to the large piece of cork they put on here. And that's what I do as well. You can see they put a piece of leather on the bis there. That actually makes it a little bit more slick than just brass, but you can also just put like a piece of Teflon there for that sliding linkage to work really, really well. They've also got a piece of leather in the saddle here. And I think, is there one on the back for the C sharp? Yep, there it is, right there. So that is, oh, and another piece of leather right here where the B hits the B flat. So that actually, the B and the B flat are linked two ways. One here for the arms, or for the, spatulas, and then on this little arm here, which is actually sort of a more meaningful adjustment because there's less flex in there. Up here, there's still a lot of flex coming down through. So if you just do the adjustment here, it doesn't do as much as having it here. But you can't just do it here because then this will click. So, oh, and you can see they put leather on the bottom of the B there. So they've got leather on leather right there. It's interesting. Yeah, and there's your cork for your low C. And that's about it. So that's what the key heights look like. You can see the B and the B flat, pretty good guide for those is that, they're usually just about planar with the key guard here. Same with the end of the C, and that's a pretty good starting point for those. So that was the original setup on a King Zephyr Special. You can see the seal is still actually like, sitting proud with the paper here. This is really amazing condition. But yeah, I'm really lucky where I get to see original setup quite a bit. It's really informed my repairs quite a lot. It's taught me a lot about the original intent of the maker. My general philosophy is that, they know more than I did. And the sort of customizations people do so often with, adding weights or, doing tone hole crescents or like dropping things down the bow, the modifications are usually unnecessary if the horn is set up right. This horn will play really, really well in tune. There's this idea that old horns don't play in tune, but they do if you have a reasonable mouthpiece and you put your key heights where they need to be to make you put your mouthpiece in the right spot, right? Key heights are an enforcement mechanism for mouthpiece placement, and that's how you get everything to line up, right? You can tune one note and have it be in tune wherever you put your mouthpiece, but if it starts to get weird on the rest of the horn, that means your key heights aren't in the right spot, so your mouthpiece isn't in the right spot for other notes. It might be in the right spot for that one note, but not everything else. So anyways, I've found original setup to be pretty instructive. They're not always perfect. For instance, like modern Yamahas are way too open. I don't know why they do that. Perhaps it's like, the tone is like bigger, right? But the intonation can be a little bit weird. And I usually close those down a tiny bit to really good effect without losing really any projection or anything. But so yeah, since I get to see these, I figured I would start sharing when I see particularly obscenely good condition original examples of particular horns. Figured I'd start sharing that with y'all so you can see the original setup, original intent of the maker, and use that as another data point when you are doing work. All right, my name is Matt Storr. I repair saxophones for a living. Hopefully you found this helpful, useful, and informative. Thank you for watching.